Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world. A very warm welcome to Meet Menaca, episode 98.
What a journey it has been.
And soon we will be reaching the 100. It feels like a dream. Today, we are going to be talking about someone who has had a transformational story. The story of resiliency, who has transformed from a prisoner to a professional, who is Roy Ratnavel. It is such a pleasure and honor to have him on board today. He is the Executive Vice President of CL Financial and the Head of Distribution of CL Global Asset Management. We will come back further into the speaker because it's so much to talk about him. Firstly, about the show. Meet Menaca features experts in their respective fields, sharing their wisdom, and real people sharing real stories like today to create a positive social change. It is a vibrant 90-minute multicultural online talk show to celebrate you. We would be delighted to have you join our show for the live stream airing every Sunday at 2 o'clock London time, and in South Asia, Sri Lanka, India, in summer, it is 6:30. You can join the event by clicking the link we usually share on all social medias. If you missed that, please drop us an email at meet@menaca.co and we would be happy to assist. Thank you so much for all the support you have shown us week after week, some of you from the very beginning. And as I said, it does feel like a dream to be almost closing to the 100th episode now. Please continue to support us and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's called Meet Menaca. 670 of you have already subscribed. So a huge thank you and welcome to the tribe. Now, why have we invited Roy Ratnavel today? On the surface, he's an executive vice president, as I said, but he has a life much more than that. His management is under 300 billion under management, the largest independent asset management firm in Canada. He currently leads CS national distribution team that oversees CS retail business assets over 170 million. He is a board of director of the Investment Fund Institute of Canada and the Aristotle Foundation for Public Policy. Roy is also the recipient of Report on Business, Canada's 50 Best Executives 2020 award. He summited Mount Kilimanjaro in 2019 to raise awareness about mental health. And for people who know me, know that I'm an advocate of mental health, and I'm sure we will be discussing about that today as well. But the bigger story is the world's largest publisher, Penguin Random House, publishing his extraordinary survival story from a teenage prisoner in Sri Lanka to a successful professional in Canada. So it's an honor to have you. A very warm welcome to you, Roy.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello, everyone. Thanks for the warm introduction and about that Best Executive in Canada award. I'm not sure it was an administrative error, but I was happy to receive it. Thank you.
I'm sure it's very well deserved. Thank you so much, Roy. So let's dive in. I'm sure everybody is keen to listen to you and hear the story. So let's dive in. I know your story is a testament to resiliency, and resilience is a word I'm very familiar with. Can you tell us a bit about your journey?
Yeah. First off, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to our Tamil relations and friends across the globe. I'm truly humbled to share my story, my experience, and my thoughts on life. Now, having said that, I want to officially introduce myself. My name is Roy Ratnavel, and I'm an accidental Sri Lankan by birth, a proud Canadian by choice, and an unapologetic Tamil by heritage. And our heritage that unites us here on the platform. So if I were to give you a little bit of background about myself, I was born in Colombo. And then in the early 70s, moved to Point Pedro, which is our ancestral hometown where my parents are from. I started my secondary education at Hartley College, a venerable institution, one of the oldest in Sri Lanka. And my teenage years was typical, just like anyone else's, happy-go-lucky, lots of fun. But all that changed after the 1983 riots as the Civil War picked up momentum in the North. So in May of 1987, there was an operation called Operation Liberation to recapture the land occupied by Tamil Tigers. So Sri Lankan forces were coming in to take over. And it was a very painful few weeks. And we spent a lot of our time in a bunker. And as the soldiers came into Point Pedro, I was arrested along with many of my friends and taken to the south in the Buza camp, where I spent about 3 months in horrendous conditions. And after my miraculous release from prison, sensing that there was no future for me in Sri Lanka, my father decided to send me out of the country for a better life and a safe life, and thought Canada might be that land of opportunity. And then I landed at Toronto Pearson International Airport on April 19th, 1988, with full of hope and no plans. So as a young new immigrant, just like any immigrant, I did many odd jobs. In fact, I did 3 jobs in a day. One would be working in a factory, and then cleaning office buildings at night, and then being a security guard while studying at night as well. And then I thought maybe I should try a different career path and flip through Toronto Sun newspaper to look for job opportunities. And I found an ad that said mailroom clerk wanted. And the company that put the ad was a job agency. And then I applied through that agency and eventually ended up at the time called Universal Group. Now it is called CI Global Asset Management. That's my story in a Reader's Digest version of the summary.
Thank you so much. It is a powerful story. And sadly, that too many of us are familiar with such stories, which is a shame. So, but what stands out is how far you have come from those initial days. And I think that's what makes you stand out from the crowd. And a lot of us can learn a lot of things from you, how to get there. Thank you so much for sharing that story, Roy.
Thank you.
So tell us about your life as a prisoner. I know you are not a criminal, but a political prisoner, and that too at a very tender teenage. Now you manage a large organization. What ingredients do you think helped you get here?
That's an excellent question. So let me give you a little bit of a story around the prison time, and I have talked about it in detail in the book. So you have to buy the book to get the rest of the story.
I put up definitely buy that.
I had to plug the book. There were about 2,700 of us, and they split us up into 52 groups and assigned each of us a prison number. I was prisoner number 1056, hence the title of my book, Prisoner Number 1056. The primary objective of the imprisonment was to coerce and as many of us possible to confess to being members of Tamil Tigers. The government then could claim to the world that the prisoners were, in fact, insurgents, not innocent young boys. And I was 17 years old at the time. Most of the kids were about that age, somewhere between 15 to 40. That's the age range of people, all men in that prison. The coercion to admit to some kind of a guild to achieve that goal came in many different forms. Intimidation and threats to our families were, I would say, the mild versions of it. Then there were various forms of torture, severe beatings with sand-filled plastic pipes and electric shocks to private parts, and lashing by barbed wire to the upper back. And at night, I heard some men scream at the top of their voices, some cried loudly, some sobbed quietly, while others argued over sleeping spaces. We were all exasperated, driven mad. People didn't cease quarreling and telling each other to go to hell. And it actually being inside, it felt like hell, a man-made hell. So how did I get here from that man-made hell? So when my father sent me over here, and I landed in Toronto on the 19th of April, 1988, 34 years ago, on April 21st, so 3 days after, 2 days after I landed, my father was shot and killed. My father's untimely death left me with the feeling that I had to live for two people. I thought if I did well enough in life, somehow I could make up for the life he should have had. That became my single goal in life. And my father's death made me grow up faster and become a fighter. There are two kinds of pains in this world: pain that hurts and the pain that alters. The pain from the loss of my father altered me in a profound way. I used that pain from losing him as coal for my furnace of ambition. The mailroom job was a turning point in my life and ended up teaching me in a most painful way that not only life is unfair, which I already knew, but that it could never be fair. It also taught me that the world was not black and white, it was gray. Life will give you what you fight for once and for all. If only I could find out what I was capable of, and I did find out that I never negotiate when I'm on my back foot. I always hit first. That's how I landed that mailroom job. The prison experience also made me a fighter. I fought for every opportunity. And I believe opportunities are never lost, but someone will take the ones you miss. I always refuse to allow circumstances to define me and my dignity and my destiny. So I went from civil war as a teenager, and then to corporate war in around the age of 30. And I never backed down to bullies, including the boardroom bullies. There were plenty of them. And I believe that it is far better to fail in pursuit of the extraordinary than to succeed in pursuing the average, which got me here.
Thank you so much for that heartwarming, heartfelt story. I really feel for your loss, because I can only imagine how hard it must have been. Not only to flee everything you know, and then to lose one of your parents at that age. So I have a lot of respect for you.
For lack of a better word at this moment.
And I totally agree with one thing you said about opportunities. One of my mentors early on used to tell, it's like being in the railway station. The trains will always move. It is up to you whether you want to jump in or not. And then next best analogy I learned is, we always talk about half glass full, half glass empty, but usually half the glass is always filled with air, which no one talks about. And it is those opportunities we have to harness, isn't it? We have to look for those opportunities. And people who harness always change their life. And sometimes it takes a lot of courage, determination. Who better would know than you what you have to go through to get there? So it is heartwarming, but a very powerful transformational story, which can also give hope. It is always about how you look at the story, isn't it? And you have made it a story for other people to learn from, to aspire to have, and also hopefully it will touch many lives. Thank you so much, Roy.
You're welcome.
I know you were in the prison as a teenager, and it's not easy. And many people must have read that book by Viktor Frankl. He talks about his experience of the war. So as a teenager, Roy, what kept you going? Because I am positive it's not the easiest place to be in.
No, certainly not. It was not a resort, I can guarantee you that. But in that painful moment inside the prison, I was in the eye of the storm, my own storm. Somehow I achieved a moment of perfect calm and mental clarity. And those moments cleared space in my mind for the words I had heard many times from my father. And my father, when you read through the book, you'll see how much he was a hero to me, a mentor, and I've learned so much from him. That's why I particularly felt I was lost when I heard the news about his demise. He used to say, we don't choose the times we live in. The only choice we have is how we respond. I long believed that over-the-top optimists hallucinate and pessimists get depressed. However, both will never get anywhere in life. But hopelessness is an awful state of mind. So I refused to break when I was in prison, despite all the torture. I kept my hope alive. And if I have learned anything in my time on this planet, it is that in the power of hope. And so that hope left no room for despair while I was in the prison, and no room for bitterness, certainly no room for surrender. But I had no idea though what to do to escape this filth and violence of prison and the death that awaited me there. I kept thinking, what if I died here? My parents would never know what happened to me. And that was not a death I could accept. That defiance kept me going. And I'm glad that I never broke under pressure, and which when you read through the book, you'll see how I got out of the prison and ended up in Canada.
Thank you so much, Roy. It's a lot of learning to do. And I thought I'll share a bit of my story. What really resonated and brought out on me is when I had to walk through the jungle for 10 days. I was this kid who used to faint on the sight of blood. That was me, because my father is a doctor. First thing, if anyone comes with blood, he used to tell, go inside, because I would faint. But on that journey, when I had to walk through the jungle for 10 days, there was shelling from sky, and a lady got killed, a teacher got killed. And some of you have already read my book, so you know that story. And I have no idea where I got that courage from, but I was the first person to go to give the first aid, to make sure that the bleeding is stopped, and did everything I could. But of course, sadly, we lost the lady, but it does profound things to you. When you are put in that situation, you get the courage and you want to be a savior for somebody else's life. You feel responsible for your life and others. And I think Stronger Together really stands out in those moments as well. I was just thinking, like I always, often, even today, I wonder what made you want to do that at that point of time. And I think those circumstances, I think, do something to you, which sticks to you for life. And I think a lot of respect to you as well. And I can't wait to read your book to see how it all panned out. Thank you, Roy.
Thank you.
So many pieces of your story really resonates with me. So like myself, you studied in Tamil, and I know you speak like a native now. For people who are listening to you, they can witness that. How did you achieve that? Because including myself, we all have a big hurdle within us. We criticize ourselves more than anybody else criticizes us, right? And this part is one of the biggest hurdles a lot of people have who don't study in English. How did you get here?
Okay, that's another interesting question. I always kind of had this view that when I came to Canada, I always put myself in circles where I was forced to speak in English. I didn't hang out with my own tribes. It's not to say that I was don't want to hang out with my Tamil friends. I just thought, how would I learn about anything if I just hung out with my own people? So that was sort of the thing that I forced myself to do it. But really, my father is mainly the reason for it. As I mentioned, what a inspirational dad he was. He loved to read and study in English. He always maintained that Sri Lankan school system moving away from English language to teaching in the mother tongue of the students was a colossal mistake. He felt that Tamils were coming out of universities with degrees, but unable to properly express themselves in English. He used to say English is the language of business, and you can have all the best idea, but if you don't know how to express that idea to others, then you have no idea. So he wanted me to learn proper English. And I remember this one incident, England versus India cricket match was being played in South India. And I was listening to the cricket commentary over the radio in Tamil. He quickly came over and changed the radio station to BBC English feed and yelled, "English, please." He believed it was good for me to learn English at every chance I had. He often made me read sections of some random columns in English daily newspaper to make sure I didn't skip over some parts. He made me read aloud in front of him and would constantly correct my pronunciation if I deviated slightly. So he was my first English teacher. He possessed a very deep knowledge in Shakespearean literature. He taught me Hamlet at a very young age. So he instilled in me the love of English language. But when I progressed in the asset management business, my job required that I do a lot of one-on-one or group presentation to investors. And I was terrified, and I was terrible in public presentation. I didn't have the confidence. I was self-conscious. It's, a funny thing, it has been said that the biggest fear people have is public speaking, and death ranks second. So in other words, people prefer to be in the coffin rather than giving the eulogy. Just kidding aside. So I signed up for a public speaking training program to learn how to give effective presentation. I researched a lot on the subject of body language in order to better gauge the unspoken feedback from the audience. Then practice and practice and practice to get better at it. I still have a coach, believe it or not, after all these years, to perfect this craft of public speaking. And I truly believe good communication skills are like laws of physics. They apply everywhere. So I encourage any budding professionals, and I mentor a lot of young kids in the business, to really learn to master that skill of public speaking. It's very important.
Thank you, Roy. Absolutely, 100%. That reminds me, my grandmother and my father, like they all studied in English. So we were the odd lot in the family who did it.
True.
And my grandmom, everyone knows, I love her to bits, and everything I do is always dedicated to her. But the only one time she, like, in Tamil they say kuttu, but I don't, like a bit, only ever time. And I was only like 6 years, 7 years, perhaps. I was definitely not more than 8, 9 years. And only time she has done for me, that is when I couldn't spell English. Because for her, it was a shock to the system. How can a granddaughter not spell English? But
that's hilarious.
Exactly. And that reminds me. And then, of course, going from there, my father, my mother, they all contributed towards those things. They put us in elocution classes. They bought, Chanda Mama instead of Ambali Mama at home. And we would read Women's Era and whatnot. And I think it makes a huge difference. And it is a colossal mistake for sure not to study in English, because I think we are kind of disadvantaged when we want to converse and communicate.
Right.
And the other thing which really resonated with me is having a coach. Like you, I still have a public speaking coach. I had it for many, many years. And I think whether you are presenting at work, at school, at a talk show, or in business, I think communication skills is like mandatory. And I hope some of our communities will embrace that a bit.
And also with this world after COVID, everything sort of went to a hybrid world. Like right now, we're using Zoom, so you only see this up. So there's really no body language cue, because you communicate more. 90% of your communication is body language, and 10 is spoken words. So even that, so you have to learn your skills, change, and see how do you communicate on a platform like this. And that's another one I started doing as soon as the COVID hit the world.
Yeah, I mean, this was born during the COVID lockdown.
That's right. Yeah.
But it has definitely made a huge difference for many of us, starting like venturing into new things, what we always dreamt of doing, but somehow put off thought, thinking about something else.
Absolutely.
Now, coming back to the topic of resiliency, my book is called Resilience Learned. So I am a firm believer of resilience, and it is the crux of everyone's story and everyone's life, I believe, because there will be always setbacks. There will be always challenges. It could be death, the divorce, the disease, the disaster. It could be coming from any form. So what does resiliency mean for you personally?
Yeah, this is a very wide topic. And so what resiliency means to me may not be the same for someone else who's listening to our conversation. But to me, resiliency begins with failure and adversity in life. Sort of simple definition. Because failure is a necessary component of success. So in the face of failure and adversity, I stopped and looked at it differently. I have personally failed, actually spectacularly failed, personally and professionally many times. And I'm very honest about that in the book. And I didn't hide anything about my failures. But I believe regardless of whether it is conscious or unconscious, success or failure is a choice. The ironic thing about failure is that we will all fail at some point in our life. We will embarrass ourselves. There's no doubt about it, because failure is part of living a full life. But failure is success if you learn from it. I never let failure to define or distract me. Instead, I allowed setbacks to strengthen me. I always saw what I can learn and find the ways in which it helped me to build myself even stronger for the next challenge. I strongly believe that humans do better in adversity than in luxury. Adversity is an opportunity to determine the best possible course of action, because calm oceans never created a skilled sailor. It's the pressure, I always say to my son, it's the pressure that makes the basketball bounce. So I love that pressure, the resistance, because I'm a gym addict. I train every day. I always tell that resistance makes the muscles grow, and resistance also makes people grow. So when I arrived in the new country, I put myself through the resistance to learn, to change, and to evolve. So I mentioned earlier, I didn't seek comfort. Comfort would be hanging with my own Tamil friends, not learning anything outside of that. Although I enjoyed hanging with my friends, but I found people who didn't speak like me, didn't think like me, came from a different background, culture, upbringing, that gave me more chance to learn about others, the world around me. And I fought for every opportunity. As I mentioned earlier, opportunities are never lost. Someone will take the ones we miss. So in life, you don't get what you deserve what you fight for. So fight for those opportunities. And to me, that is resiliency.
Thank you so much. What better way to explain that? John Maxwell will say it, failing forward. Everyone has their own saying about failure. And it was funny that you said you have failed many times, because I always tell I am the queen of failure. I wear the crown for failure, because I have many times, personally, professionally, like you said. But it is what you learn from it and how you change from there, and taking the right actions, isn't it? Because many times we get stuck. That's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes it's better to take the risk and fail than to never take a risk and fail for sure. And I talk about muscle atrophy. This is something I mention to my son all the time. Like, you have to use other muscles in your body to have a balance in your journey. And astronauts, when they go to the moon, I mentioned this in another call, 6 months later, when they land, the muscles it's called muscle atrophy. It becomes soft and it doesn't work. And so when you stop giving resistance to yourself, you get atrophy, muscle atrophy. And that's why we have to always be conscious of that and continue to keep pushing and go against that resistance and be resilient.
Use it or lose it. That's
absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much. And the other thing I was thinking is, it is a fact that people like us, but the success lies on the thing that you take the courage to be in the environment, be with people, be in places where you don't find those people of comfort, isn't it? So that's what you have exactly done. So it's great. So it brings nicely to what I was thinking of asking. You have made success in many places. Success means very different thing to very different people. It's a very subjective term. For some people, it's $1 million in the bank. For some people, having a good relationship. For some people, it's traveling the world. And for some people, just being able to have the time to be on the show and listen to this. It varies widely. What does success mean to you?
Yeah, again, this is another very broad subject. And as you said in the outset of this question, yeah, it is different for different people. So my answers are never the perfect answers, but just what works for me and what I think about each question or topic that you're asking. So what is success to me? So it's different because I'm in my midlife. But when I was very young, it meant how big my bank account was or my title, or the sort of house I lived in, or the fancy car I drove. But now, to me, success means, is the world maybe slightly better because I made a positive impact on someone else's life or the society at large? We all will be remembered more for our kindness than any level of success we could possibly attain. I believe the character trait is called empathy for others, which is very important. But when I was young and struggling newcomer to Canada, time and money was in short supply, and I couldn't give what I didn't have. So I made sure first I made those two commodities, time and money, in ample supply so I can help others. I tell a lot of the young mentees that I talk to, it is nice to give back to society, but you can't give back or give like what you don't have. There's a paramoli in Tamil, so I encourage young people, to first acquire time, wisdom, and money, then you can give back. So to me, that is success. But to get there, you got to be professionally successful. then you can give back. So now, as I sit here today talking to you as a middle-aged man, to me now success isn't, life isn't about money or material things. It is really about conquering myself and doing my best to leave this world better than I had found it.
Perfect. I love that. It's what a legacy to leave back. And for non-Tamil speaking people on the platform today, it is very similar to "you can't pour from the empty cup." Very similar saying in Tamil, what Roy just mentioned. And yes, success means very different thing for the same person at different stages in your life, for sure. And
For sure.
From getting into the right college to having the right job to marrying the right person to leaving a legacy, isn't it? As we grow older, definitely the choices change. So thank you so much for putting that in a very beautiful way. Thank you.
And also that, you mentioned something very important. Finding the right partner in your life journey is very important. Like, I was fortunate to have met a lovely lady named Sue, and we've been happily married. And I mean, I was so busy traveling, and I probably take about 120 flights a year. I travel over 2 million miles in the air, and I'm never home. And so it was a partnership, really, that nobody succeeds in life alone. You need people, mentors, supporters, and cheerleaders, and so it's very important to find the right partner for that journey.
Happy wife, happy life. Hey,
True.
perfect. Thank you so much, Roy. On a serious note, many young people might be listening to you today because you have reached that position, and like you said, you have definitely made a difference as well now. What wisdom would you like to impart to them as a way of leaving this planet in a better way?
Yeah, this is a question close to my heart. And I said I mentor a lot of young people, and first thing I tell them is that do not tacitly relinquish responsibility for your welfare to someone else. And if you do that, you may be the last to know the potential changes that will impact your life. And that's always my first advice. Control your own destiny. Don't let other people control your destiny. So if you thought about my prison and me being here, one of the reasons, even though I was in a place where I couldn't control my destiny much, but I was able to somehow get out of there. And as I said, you will know about that in the book. So that is very important first, to really not being responsible for your own life. So I would tell the young people, when you get out there in the real world, sometimes you may have to deal with mean, difficult, unreasonable people, and some may be even racist. But humanity has no better path forward than to accept this fact with humility. But regardless of all these difficult people, it doesn't fundamentally make a huge impact on people's ability to make a difference and make a positive impact in this world. So for example, if you said that you are a victim, then you will get sympathy from people. That much is for certain. But sympathy never solved an issue. If your habit is about being a victim, then you will remain as one. So I wanted to make sure that personally, even though I had this horrible experience, I never wanted to consider myself as a victim, because I thought if I did that, my tormentors will win. So I wasn't going to back down, I wasn't going to break down. And it's really important for kids to know that. It's so easy to blame everybody else but yourself. And I tell my friends this, race victors, not victims, winners, not whiners. So I learned early on that solving my problem was my own responsibility. Especially after my prison experience, I tried to, in some way, transfer my trauma to others. Then I soon realized the world owed me nothing except for freedom and choice. That's it. Everybody only deserved two things: freedom and choice. The rest is up to make a life for ourselves. Because I knew that when I had freedom, the outcome will be necessarily be different. And I will be rewarded for good choices and penalized for the bad one. That is the price of freedom. So no one can control the outcome, but they are in 100% in control of the effort. So before blaming other people, I say one must go to the nearest mirror and ask ourselves, what could I have done to change the outcome? In the end, it is your responsibility for your own life. And I tell all these young mentees, you are the CEO of the corporation called you. And so that's the advice. Just control your own destiny. Don't let others control yours.
Thank you, Roy. I do coaching and mentoring like you do. And I always say it is, when you go on a journey, it's your choice whether you want to be on the driver's seat or on the passenger seat.
Correct.
If you choose to be on the passenger seat, then you can't blame the driver.
That's absolutely correct.
So it is up to you what you do with your life. And I think choices are always there. And I think they're always difficult. Most of the choices which transform you, which makes you or helps you to get somewhere else, they're always difficult choices. Are you going to be having the courage to do it, isn't it? You had to embrace that courage many times over to get where you got. Nothing is going to be handed to you on the plate, but also have the determination and courage. I wrote a few days back, I think the fear of failure, like you mentioned before, keeps us from doing many great things in life. And Absolutely. Then why we haven't reached anywhere. It's like not starting the engine and, imagining why we haven't reached the destination where we wanted to go.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Roy. So you started, from Sri Lanka, you came to Canada, and then how did you get started in the asset management business? And tell us about your career path.
Okay, where do I start? So I mentioned that one day coming back from a factory job was a long shift. Like I worked 15 hours in a packaging factory. My job was with a glue gun and spraying this thing on a board that comes in. I spray, and then it's just 15 hours of mindless, repetitive, monotonous action. And I was standing next to a man, and I asked how long he's been there. He said 20 years, and he kind of talks to himself all the time. I thought, I could see myself being that person in 20 years. So I thought I'd have to get out of here. And also, I didn't want to just survive. I want to live. And there's two different meanings, surviving and living. And I want to live. And I wanted more out of life, like a proper life. So that night I came in and looking through the paper and found that thing and applied for the job, went to the interview. I wasn't given the job, but I found out which company was hiring, and I showed up. And I refused to leave. And so they had no choice but to hire me. So I was hired as a mailroom clerk. I was 19 years old. And I was 25th person in the company. It was a small asset management company at the time. We were managing about probably a couple of $100 million, $200 million or something. And I was the 25th person, lowest man in the hierarchy. And so as I said, I fought for every opportunity. In Ati Sudi, which is, you can translate to your non-Tamil audience. My dad used to tell me, do things to perfection. That's what it means in English, loosely translated. And I wanted to make sure I did my job more than what I was asked to do, and so that got noticed by my higher ups, and slowly start moving to different roles. And again, I said, you control your own destiny. If I didn't do that, I would have stayed in the mailroom forever. I kept moving, and then started getting more opportunities. And then in 1994, the company went public. So we did an initial public offering to take the company public and listed it on the Toronto Stock Exchange. So at that time, I thought, okay, I should be an owner, not a worker. And so I went and borrowed, begged, and whatever I could do to come up with a pool of money. and I bought the initial offering in the open market. And in fact, me and the chairman of the board are the only two people still have the what's called the treasury shares. And then CI, that stock became the best performing financial services stock for a long time, for 20 years on the Toronto Stock Exchange. I say to people to be owners, not workers, because, and I have this saying, I always say that nobody washes the rental car. But if you own the car, you clean it, you keep it nice and shiny. So that's how I started. And then I became the one of the VPs in sales. Then I started running a region, Western Canada region. And then I was brought back here to be the senior executive and the head of Canadian distribution for entire Canada. So it was a long journey, but it's a hard-won battle. But I learned something, that in the asset management business, that investors are seeking for superior performance must have the courage to depart from the pack, even though doing so means accepting the risk, as I said earlier, or also being wrong sometimes. So thinking differently and better than others is a key to performance or outperformance from the pack. And it is not enough to be right. You have to be more right than most, because you can't always be right. You're going to be wrong sometimes. But if you can be more right than most, then you're winning. This means being able to tell when the investment crowd is focused on all the wrong things. It's a herd mentality. Then you have to get away from the herd mentality, and that same thing applies to life, because animals blend in with the environment as a pack to survive, but humans need to stand out to be successful in life. So don't buy into groupthink, and I never did. And you have to be an individual, have your own thoughts and think differently. Be with people who disagree with you so you can get a different point of view. And so has been my journey.
Thank you, Roy. And we are so proud of you.
Thank you.
It comes from the bottom of my heart, because what a journey it has been. And one of my mentors would often say is, you're born to stand out. Why do you fight so hard to
blend in?
That's what exactly it is, what you're saying, because we are so bent upon fitting in and getting the approval of the entire world, and we miss chances. We stop doing things what really makes us happy and be successful in your own right. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I was just saying to you the other day when we had a brief chat, it's if you're liked by everybody, there's something wrong with you. If you're hated by everybody, then there's something definitely wrong with you. But if everybody liked, you have never said anything honest. I think people should have the courage to say things, even when it's unpopular, in a very nice way. And I tell my son that all the time: speak up, because if you don't, the world will never hear you. And so that is very important to teach our young kids, to really speak up and have an opinion, even if it's not the popular thinking.
Thank you, Roy. I know for people who know me, they know I speak up all right. Thank you so much.
I get the sense.
Thank you so much, Roy. It's always a pleasure to know your thoughts. What does leadership mean to you? And can you give us some insight into what makes a good leader? Because even us, but obviously for the coming generations, it's a very important skill for people to learn.
Right. Yeah. The two real important skill sets to have is communication, as we discussed earlier, and the leadership skills. And again, what I'm about to say is what worked for me and how I look at it. And obviously people have different definition of what leadership is. And there are many different type of leaderships. The one that attracts me and how I lead my large team is, first off, leadership isn't about just leading. It's about creating new leaders. And so what is leadership? Well, there is a huge distinction between a manager and a leader. My view is that managers may do things right, but leader does the right things. Most managers also fail to comprehend that their job are not about personal achievements, but instead about enabling others to achieve. I've seen that one too many times. Sometimes you become a better leader by working with bad managers, and that happened to me. But to overcome that, anxiety about not allowing others to achieve, is a leader must know how to delegate and project confidence. A leader needs to delegate tasks for others in the team to accomplish. It had been my observation that insecure managers often don't delegate as much as they should, because either they feel fear of losing control and or being burdening the staff. I don't believe delegation is an abdication of responsibility. The best leaders often take a back seat and build the talent by delegating the team to do the driving. But also sometimes a leader must take charge and drive the change forward. So inspiring leadership is about leading by example with great generosity of team spirit. And I work with some amazing leader, and I noticed that a true leader is not divisive, mean-spirited, or self-promoting or other blaming. Really good leaders bring out the best in others and become an advocate for the team and give credit where it's due and accept responsibility without deflection. And a pragmatic leader is inspirational, even when times are bleak, and demonstrates a realistic, positive view of the future. So finally, to me, leadership is never about whether I added more to those who are self-motivated and perform at a high level. It is whether I provided enough for those who have too little of those qualities. But having said that, I have led many teams, and I have learned one thing from leading teams. Even with good intentions and planning and the positive input of people around me, victory always comes down to having a will to win. That's how I look at leadership.
Thank you so much. And there are many places where we could have better leaders today in the life. And
Absolutely.
We need more good leaders. And hopefully people like you will inspire better leaders for the future. So that's the plan. Thank you so much, Roy. Means a lot. Thank you.
That's what politicians do, right? They focus on the dividing issues, not uniting issues, because they like to divide and conquer, as they say. Those are not leaders. They are opportunists, and I can't stand them. I think, every human, whether black, brown, yellow, in between, we all have very human common things that binds us. So family, security, these are basic human needs. And if you focus on what unites us opposed to what divides us, I think the world will be a much better place. But I think that's probably a dream world, in my opinion.
Thank you. Right. I think leadership is about creating more positive leaders than anything, right, isn't it? Because like you said, then the future will be better for everyone.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So now we all have dreams. You have, I have, and everyone on this platform have, and people who would be listening to it on YouTube, Facebook, they will all be having. But the most difficult thing is to motivate yourself every single day to achieve those dreams when the roadblocks comes, how to face them. So how do you think the best way to keep someone motivated?
Okay. I would say that the dream is free, because anybody can dream. So the dream is free, but the hustle sold separately. And I have seen people have these dreams and those goals, but there's no hustle to back up that dream. And so you're right. We are all worthy of a life we desire, but it can only happen if we exhibit the right behavior and mindset. The past events, like for an example, I went through trauma, and many have growing up in war or even other traumas. Though past events are unchangeable, they can serve as an important lesson in overcoming the struggles of life to strive for a better future. So the first thing is to never have self-pity. My father was one of those who, whenever I complain and cry about stuff, he says it's self-pity, stop it. So we need to stand up proudly with a stiffer spine as if we're going to draw a bow, right? Just stand up. And do not go home pitying yourself defeated. I mean, when the job was not given to me, I didn't come home crying about it. I just found where this job is and I just attacked it head on and demanded that I should be working, and I was given the opportunity. So don't ever go home pitying yourself in defeat. Because in the natural world, self-pity doesn't exist. Self-pity is very unique to humans. It is our burden and the locus of our self-destruction. Self-pity is the fastest way to destroying yourself. And so just keep the hustle going and do not relent. And that will continue to motivate. And I've said this before, and I will say it again, do not ever compare yourself to someone else. There's always going to be someone smarter, faster, richer, more successful. The thing that you have to do is bench yourself against yourself. Ask yourself, am I better off today than a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago? If the answer is yes, continue doing what you're doing. The answer is no, stop and think about a different strategy. But don't ever self-pity. That's a terrible way to live your life.
Even better than yesterday, right? Even if you
yes.
can more
yes.
than yesterday, it's still success. Thank you. Thanks, Roy. So I often say I have striked off the 3Ds, the death, the divorce, the depression. On a serious note, I truly believe mental health is not addressed in the South Asian community as much as it should. So can you share your insight on this matter, please?
Yeah, this topic is near and dear to my heart because after my father's death, my mom was a very young widow. She was 44 years old at the time. And then I had to sponsor her to come to Canada. And a decade later, I started, 4 decades, I should say, I watched my mother struggle with deep depression and paranoid schizophrenia to the point of sometimes suicidal ideations. I felt though she was shackled and caged in her own brain without knowing if a key existed to escape her situation, which tormented her immensely until her last breath. And it broke my heart to see my mother in that condition. My mother is no longer, and she has been relieved of her anguish. But for many millions around the globe, this suffering is still real and an ongoing issue. For them, overcoming their mental illness can feel like climbing a mountain. To honor my mother and those who are out there, along with my wife, Sue, and my son, Aaron, we wanted to let those who are fighting mental illness to know that they can conquer their own mountains. Together, we mountaineered for mental health by summiting Mount Kilimanjaro on August 29th, 2019, before the world went into a lockdown. And as soon as I submitted, I put up my mother's picture at the top of the Mount Kilimanjaro in solidarity and as a symbolic gesture, because I did it for her and many like her to bring awareness and raise money. Conquering our personal mountain is something we all battle in our daily lives. With the climb to Kilimanjaro, we wanted to let people with mental illness to see that it is possible to overcome their struggles. They deserve our support to help them fight their daily battles by conquering themselves. So as you said, it is a taboo in any community, but especially in South Asian community. So I think the very least, if you're listening to this, it is vital that we show some empathy for those who struggle and that we take the time to say a few kind words to those who truly need to hear them, because I sometimes see how badly they are treated. I see it all the time and it breaks my heart, because that kind gestures can be a symbol of a welcome shift in how we support those who struggle with mental health every day, and also to overcome this horrible stigma about this unfortunate condition.
Thank you, Roy. And being an ambassador for mental health myself, I applaud you for being able to do that for millions. And 1 in 6 people now have some kind of mental health issue. And
Absolutely.
it's beyond me to understand why do we still have this stigma attached to it, really. So thank you.
And I always say that if someone said I have cancer, people will sympathize that person, because you can, or someone said I broke my leg, then they'll sympathize because you can see it and feel it. Mental illness is something that, nobody sympathize with because it doesn't feel like an issue, but it is a big issue. As you said, it's a big issue. 1 out of 6 is a lot of people. And I think, Tamil community should really focus on, because a lot of war trauma even still lingers on, PTSD. In some level, I had PTSD, so and I tackle that in the book as well.
Sure. Thank you so much. You have spoken so much, and we have learned a lot, and definitely cannot wait to get your book. So what made you want to write the book, and what is this book all about?
Okay, thank you for asking that question about my passion project. Once I got to a reasonable economic and career stage, around in my mid-30s, I knew that I would one day write a book about being terrorized as a young boy who experienced a brutal civil war in Sri Lanka and then transformed in Canada in his late teens and early 20s. I wanted to tell the world this survival story, a Tamil boy's survival story. In war, there are no winners, only survivors. I'm one of the many survivors of Sri Lankan war. Since I arrived in Canada, I have been living in 2 worlds. We all do. One with loss, grief, and haunting memories, and the other with peace, prosperity, and profit. One is clearly painful, and the other is very gratifying. Like me, many Tamils often struggle to reconcile between the 2 worlds. I thought this book could help to heal those festering emotional wounds of mine and countless others. I wanted this book to give a voice to a generation of Tamil immigrants who are coming of age now in Canada and other Western nations, and to tell the untold story of them or their parents leaving Sri Lanka and the experience prior to arriving on friendlier shores to build a better future. I also wanted to tell our collective story to reach a wider audience by appealing to those who have experienced genocide and ethnic cleansing beyond the Tamil community. At the very least, I thought I want to document my family story so that future generations of Ratnavel clan will know what happened to their ancestors. So this book is a conventional memoir that will speak not only to the immigrant experience, but the trials and tribulations of 87 million strong global Tamil community. On the surface, it's an uplifting Tamil story. So I highly encourage every one of you to pre-order this book on Amazon or any other site. It's available now. So when you go there, the cover is not the final cover. They're still working on a design, which we are going back and forth on. And not only just buy it for yourself, but also give it out to your non-Tamil friends or send them the links, because it is important for us to tell this collective story of our suffering and the success. Don't forget that. We're not victims anymore, we are victors. And I think that's how we want to look at it. This book really tries to achieve that through the story of mine, but really telling millions of people's story collectively.
Thank you so much. I know how hard it is to write a book, and for Penguin, it's not an easy task. So congratulations.
Thank you.
tradition. And what I did in my book at the end is I asked for 12 people to write something about the book. And it was many of them for non-Sri Lankans for the same reason, like you said, so that other people know the perspectives where we come from. Thank you.
And it's also cathartic for the community. I've spoken about this book publicly a few times, and I felt it in the room, how people got emotional, and it actually helped to heal those who have been suffering, keeping it all in, and to see people come up after I speak to give me a hug and shed a few tears and really embrace the story. It is so I think it landed in the right spot.
Thank you so much. I never run late on my show. There's always a first time, and you have drawn me in so much. And I think we're almost a few minutes definitely going to be on the side of it. Apologies for everybody for that.
I talk too much. My wife says that all the time.
So do I. So makes two of us. What are your 5 takeaways for success, Roy?
Okay, that's pretty simple. 1, have no self-pity. It is the fastest way to destroying yourself. 2, have a pragmatic plan, because goals without plan is like a rudderless ship. It goes nowhere. 3, have the ability for flexibility in your life and be open to change and grow as a person, because to improve is to change. And then 4, have friends who disagree with you, because groupthink leads to failure for sure. And finally, 5 is have a attitude of gratitude. Showing gratitude to those who help you is a constant awareness that makes sense of your past and keeps you humble.
Thank you. Great tips. Thank you so much. I wouldn't be expecting anything less than that from you anyway. So thank you so much. We learned a lot, Roy, today. What has been your experience of the talk show?
1 word, amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask for much longer feedback later on, but yes, I'll take that for now. Thank you so much, Roy.
Well, I'm saving time.
It means a lot. Thank you. So for people who are being on the Zoom, please hold on. The show is not over yet, because I know there are some new faces today, and we will be going into the exclusive Q&A with Roy afterwards. So please do hold on. And there's a lot of announcements to make as well. So I'm going to follow tradition and do that first. Next week, same time, same place, we are going to be talking about periodontal health, a very different topic from today. That is prevention and management of periodontal health, which is the gum disease, is very prevalent in many South Asian communities and all over the world as well. With Dr. Rudra Mohan. He's a periodontist practicing in Delhi in NCR region of India for the past few years. He pursued his graduation and master's in periodontology from the prestigious Manipal College of Dental Sciences, and now runs a private practice, along with being a YouTuber dentist with 7,000 subscribers. So I will be talking about him so much more. We have a huge announcement to make today. We will be reaching our 100th episode on the 14th of August, and I cannot wait to celebrate it with all of you. So we are going to be slightly changing the format for the day, and we have a very eminent speaker coming, and so he will be speaking instead of the Q&A type you have come very familiar with over the past 98 shows with today. So who are we having? It would be Sir Dr. Professor Sabaratnam Aral Kumaran will be coming on our show to talk, and we will be announcing more details with it, and a lot to talk about him. He is a professor emeritus of ONG, that is Obstetrics and Gynecology, St. George's University of London, foundation professor of ONG, University of Nicosia, visiting professor in Imperial College London, and past president of International Federation of Obstetric Gynecology, the British Medical Association, and the Royal College of Obstetricians, and the list goes on. And he was also appointed the Knight Bachelor by Her Majesty, the Queen of the UK, in her birthday honours list in June 2009 in recognition for his services to medicine and healthcare. And what a pleasure and honour to have him on the show to celebrate our 100 episodes. So thank you so much for all of you who have helped. Now, over to Raj Madhavan to give the vote of thanks.
Hello, I'm Raj from Canada, like Roy. I don't know if I can talk at all as I'm numbed, speechless by Roy's powerful presentation. So I thought of asking Menaca to find somebody to do the vote of thanks. I'm just kidding. That's a very powerful presentation by Roy. It was an amazing speech, and it's very heart-touching presentation. On behalf of Meet Menaca Celebrating team, I have the honor and privilege in presenting the vote of thanks to Roy. Roy is not just a motivational speaker. While Roy shares his story, he also gives hopes to people who struggle to survive and come up in life. Roy's audience varies from business professionals to university students to high school students of ages as low as 18 years. His message, as I see, if I can do it, you all can do it. Roy's story is not a story of one man. It's a story of many people who flee out of their countries from atrocities and started their lives in other countries and have become very successful in their lives. But Roy is different and unique from the rest by being someone coming out and sharing his own stories and giving hope to people. Not too many who become successful are interested in others' well-being or success, or even have time to come out and help others. Success is not counted by how high you have climbed, but by how many people you brought with you. Roy has helped many. I have the privilege to say this as I know Roy very well, because Roy is a cousin of my wife, Nandini, and the best man for our wedding. Having said that, on behalf of Meet Menaca team, my sincere thanks to Roy for taking your time coming out to our show and sharing your story and giving hope to others. Our next thanks goes to all viewers signing through Facebook and Zoom to watch the Meet Menaca Celebrating talk shows. You are the reason for the success of our shows. Last but not least, my thanks goes to Meet Menaca Celebrating team for your tireless efforts in bringing a show on a weekly basis. In 2 weeks, we will be celebrating our 100th episode, as Menaca said just now. In concluding my word of thanks, thank you, Roy. Thanks again for coming out and giving us hope. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and thanks for listening to me drone on and on about stuff. But I always say when I speak, even if there's one little nugget that people can take away, then it's a success.
Thank you so much, Raj Madhavan and Roy Ratnavel. We have learned a lot, and I'm eagerly waiting to take part in the Q&A to see what more nuggets Roy is going to share. So thank you so much for that. As I mentioned before, thank you so much for everyone who is on the call today. And a huge thank you for people who are listening on Facebook. I know that you support us from Facebook week after week. You even suggest questions and what speakers to bring and the topics. So thank you so much for your support too. A humble request to do keep supporting us and are subscribing to the Meet Menaca YouTube channel, because that's the only way we can add to the library of videos we already have, so that this impact can spread across the globe. So thank you so much. Thank you for people who are on Facebook. It has almost come to that time of the day to say goodbye. We will be meeting you next week, same time, same place, discussing about periodontal health, Prevention and Management with Dr. Rudra Mohan, and the week after that with Sir Sabaratnam R. Kumaran to celebrate our 100th show. Until then, stay safe, be happy, and keep smiling.